Hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with me, Sam Webster Harris. As always, diving into self-improvement, and I know a lot of you are into professional development and business, so today we have some insights on professional success, learning how to assess your creative and analytical skills and when to invest in improving them and when you should outsource your skills and spend time doing your strengths. Things like how to choose an industry to work in and be ahead of the curve for opportunities, and diving deeper into your own personal character. For the discussion today, I have the brilliant Keith Wallace, who was the VP of Web Summit, one of the world's leading tech conferences, and now runs the conferences for Kindest. He's a very observant individual who I feel is always watching and learning from those around him, and as he's worked with hundreds of thousands of high-flying business builders, he certainly knows a lot. We begin the discussion talking about opportunity spotting and investing your time into an industry early to be ahead of the curve. Keith is full of wisdom and you're going to learn lots from him, so take notes.
I had some good advice from a friend being like, if you think you can get early in on a wave and kind of ride that going forwards, you're always going to be like a good position. And it sounds kind of like you kind of saw that coming with Web Summit and just like the rise of tech, and these kind of events are going to be just massively growing and useful and kind of, got involved with something that's just really super interesting and a useful wave to be on. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It was actually quite interesting. When I first joined, I didn't know a lot about the startup world or VC funding. And I was probably in Web Summit for about a year when the big talk was funding is going to dry up. We've hit the peak. The startup scene is going to start dropping. And there's a little bit of like worry internally, like, is this true? Will this happen? But it's amazing how the growth has continued. And even during the pandemic, it's even doubled down again. And I think now we're starting to see a little bit of a stagnation compared to where we were 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Funding rounds are just huge. And there's more unicorns today than there's ever been in the world. And you know yourself, having gone through Techstars, what it takes to be a founder. And it's no mean feat. It's no mean feat. I have a lot of respect for anyone that builds their own company.
I have noticed the amount of friends I've had like just having sort of massive mental health breakdowns and like panic attacks and stuff for months. And I'm like, whoa, this wasn't so talked about as part of the like be a founder in the world thing.
So true.
It's stressful. And also it's not just like the ones having difficulties, like some of the ones that are smashing all their funding rounds and having every success and stuff just seems to be stressful, whatever happens.
It really is. But you're being successful or not being successful, there's a lot of stress and a lot of weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, definitely. Like I have realized that I really like stress in some ways. It's like I get super bored with that stress. And so I also go and do ultramarathons and other idiots. But I also, responsibility isn't my favorite thing always. I've come to realize as far as going through my CEO journey, I'm kind of like, okay, the way I like working is more sort of like 3 months absolutely head down, execute, but then like have a month off where no one's going to call me and stuff. And trying to fit that into running a startup isn't ideal and working out who I need to have around me. Like, okay, actually, I really need operations people that run the show, and I'm less responsible for some stuff. And okay, I'm not going to be the one that's sort of in on all the details necessarily. It's more of like, okay, I'm going to big ideas. I'll go and make great speeches and talk to cool people and network like hell and stuff. And then, other people will deal with stuff. As long as you're able to recruit the right people, it's okay. Otherwise, you can just sort of have this idea of being great and just massively mess things up.
I think there's a lot around that in terms of you see some of the startups coming through, Web Summits are coming through the alumni over the years and them raising different rounds, capital at different stages and being at different growth stages. And you can see the evolution of some of the founders from founder to CEO to, okay, CEO role might not actually work with them, but they should bring in a different CEO and their skill set is more on the biz dev or being the operations person and how it fluctuates that the person to bring the company to 50 or to 200 employees might not be the same person that needs to bring it from 200 to 1,000 or 1,000 onwards. There's definitely different skill sets, and realizing that early enough and pulling in the right people to support that journey is so crucial to the success of these companies.
So where would you put yourself if you sort of were to define like your own characteristics? Would you say you're more of like the kind of executor, like getting into the details and sort of making sure everything's sort of ticking all the boxes and things? So are you more of like the creative, like what's a box?
When I first got into advertising, I had built in myself that I wasn't a creative person. This is probably 5 years of working in finance and spreadsheets and numbers, and probably even being younger, I think because I couldn't paint or draw, I didn't think I was creative. And then I remember having a lecture years ago when I was doing my advertising course called Creative Thinking. And she was talking about how creativity is a skill you can learn. And that was a game changer for me. And hearing that and then going down the rabbit hole of different TED Talks that she would recommend or different books she would recommend, and learning that it really is a skill you can get better and better. And the creative part of your brain is something you can train, was absolutely game changing just to open up my mind. So then when I started working in advertising, I started leaning into that creativity a lot more and really enjoying that. And all of a sudden, as the years gone on, I was like, oh, okay, I truly believe that you can be both left-sided and right-sided brain. You don't put yourself in a box. As soon as you do that, you just hinder and grow, which is a crazy thing. And I always try to make sure my sister, who's an accountant, while we try to explain that to her, is like, just because you're an accountant doesn't mean you don't have to be creative. Going on a bit now to when I joined Web Summit, I think the first few years, the role and the job I did was very operational based, and it was how we could build this team and how we could scale this team with the future proof of making sure we could scale it even further and further. So when I joined, the conference was about 40,000. We probably had about 200 partners globally. And it was a case of, well, what if we wanted to do 10 conferences of 40,000 people? How would we onboard 1,000 partners instead of 200 partners? So you start to think about, okay, well, operationally, we have to build the foundations correctly so that we can onboard with just hiring more and more people and do it kind of in a system that will scale. So I think for the first few years, I really dived into the operation side of things. And for the last 3 years, I would say I've taken a bit more of a step back and looked at the strategic run. And how do you scale a conference? You need to take a step back out of the operations and look at it more from a macro environment. And this is a skill set I think I've been learning more and more over the last 3 years. And probably something that I enjoy more now. So I think it's at different stages, just leaning into what's important at that stage. And then hopefully being able to pull those skill sets that you learn in different areas or different challenges and bringing them with you as you go on throughout your career, I think is the way I would view it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a point of life experience and having like a diverse range of different things you've done that you can actually come up with some really unique sets of strengths, which makes you, which is nice. And certainly on the whole, like creativity isn't something you're just born with necessarily. It's, I think there's lots of things around like personality profiling and things that sort of make you think that you are a specific way, or like you are an introvert, you are more expressive, whatever, and doesn't, really account for the fact that there's lots of things you can learn. There's maybe some limits on the sort of things that you can do, like you're not going to become like perfectly, like perfect pitch, etc., or whatever, but you can still radically change how much you appreciate those different parts of you, I feel, and like what you can express. It's nice. So it's good to hear. And like, something I found like with climbing is that you can try doing like a route and it seems like completely impossible, and you just practice it twice, and then next thing you know, you just do it, and it's like quite simple, and you just have these blockers in front of you. It's the same with trying to, I don't know, whatever form of creativity it is.
Yeah, totally. Sorry. And it always generally starts with a limiting belief. If when someone has taught you or told you at quite an early stage that you're better suited to something else, or you can't do this, and then you just tell yourself throughout the years that you can't do that, or I'm not the type of person.
It's just like a sort of an easy barrier, like, cool, this is what I'm operating within, like guidelines of gravity and stuff. So I like to think of like the whole first principles of physics, like, does something break the rules of physics? No. So probably it could be done.
Brilliant.
Which does run me into issues when it comes to law. That's right. Yeah, nice. On the subject of breaking the law, you said accounting doesn't mean that you can't be creative. That sounds like a definitely a line for tax avoidance instead of creative accounting. I'm not sure what you're meaning there.
Not that you can't be creative in accounting, more so that as an accountant, I was so analytical driven and very much focused on certain skill sets in that job and career, where internally I didn't think I was creative. So I didn't lean into any creative elements outside of work. I just didn't see myself as a creative person.
It's very much like this number must equal that one. It's like rigid. That's
exactly. But the realization you can still be a creative person, but doing accounting, like an accountant can still be a painter. It was that I hadn't associated it to it. To that course I did in university, and that the small thing can make such a big difference.
Funny, I definitely had similar things where you realize as a teacher sort of the power that you have, or like the random moments that people latch onto suddenly, where like you'll be telling someone the same thing and like I'll just be ignoring it, and then suddenly sometimes like a sparkle will hit and stuff, and yeah, you don't know when this thing's going to happen, so you just have to keep on giving potential for something epic to come up.
Yeah, it shows you how valuable the human brain is and how powerful words can be. I think people can be very adamant at times, and I've always tried to err on the line of caution about, giving some advice. You can only impart a little bit of your thought process and what you've experienced. Be quite careful in kind of how much you dictate or force someone to think a certain way, I would say.
Yeah, you can definitely give people kind of rigid sets of thinking by accident, just when you sort of nonchalantly sort of say like, yeah, this doesn't happen, I'll go and do that. Nice. Anyway, on the subject of failures, I did want to ask you about what's been like the biggest failure during a conference, because it just seems like there's so much stuff going on. Like it's a huge thing. You've got like entire taxis and the amount of like VIPs and things there. There must have been some pretty interesting complete cock-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, going back to live events, it's human nature. It's like live TV, stuff is going to go wrong. You just have to be prepared that everything won't be as smooth sailing as you can plan effectively as you want, but stuff will just naturally go wrong. And I think being in the live event space, for anyone that's working in it, they'll all know and say the same thing. You have to be a certain mindset and kind of personality type to be able to not overthink or overstress when stuff goes wrong and just go straight into problem solving mode. There's been so many problems, but the one that always sticks in my mind is the one that happened the first year we were in Collision in Toronto. To give you kind of the story of what happened, I'll go back a little bit about when we first decided to move to Collision to Toronto. So Collision used to be in New Orleans for a few years. We moved it to Toronto. We did it. Oh yeah, it was cool. It's great. I know. We did it in Vegas for a couple of years before that as well. It's moved around. New Orleans is a great city, fun city, but the tech scene wasn't there at the time. So we moved to Toronto, and whenever you move a conference to a new city or country, you have to kind of meet the tech ecosystem, explain who or what you are, what you're trying to do, and bring them along the journey and get them excited as well, because you're really down for them. So when I moved to Canada first, it was very much like, how do we tell the story of what Collision is? You've been to Web Summit. It's one thing talking about it. It's another thing actually witnessing and seeing it. So what we went around doing is bringing in a large Canadian delegation to Web Summit. So I worked with the City of Toronto, I worked with the Mayor's office, I worked with the Canadian federal government. We brought about 500 Canadians over to Lisbon, built them a little Canadian pavilion right in the center, in the heart of Web Summit. Brought the mayor over, Mayor John Tory, and brought him on a tour of kind of Web Summit, explained the inner workings, had him front and center on opening night and his kind of delegation. So they got to see the kind of magic of that center stage. It's 17,000 person seater stadium. Set up lots of meetings with him. So I had him meet the Secretary General for the United Nations, Antonio Gutierrez, had him meet the Mayor of Lisbon. And it was at that meeting with the Mayor of Lisbon, he's kind of turned to the Mayor and said, what's the most important thing to get right bringing this conference to Toronto? The Mayor of Lisbon just said, Wi-Fi. Just get the Wi-Fi right. It's a huge undertaking to give 70,000 people Wi-Fi within a conference. That I was saying. So every time I met the mayor after that, Mayor Tory in Toronto, it's like, will the Wi-Fi work? Will the Wi-Fi work? Like, yes, it will. Yes, it will. I have assurances. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Obviously, you know where this is going. When day one of the conference happens, we have kind of 25,000 people in the conference. There's multiple talks happening. There's partners networking on the floor. There's startups pitching. Out of nowhere, the Wi-Fi just crashes. And in that moment, you just go into kind of panic mode and troubleshooting. And okay, well, what's happening? Within about 5 minutes of the Wi-Fi going off, the fire alarm started going off. So now all of a sudden, we have 25,000 people in the event, no Wi-Fi, and the fire alarm going off. You're like, okay. You're on your radio, you're talking to different teams. The production team are figuring out the fire alarm, the IT team are figuring out the Wi-Fi. And then you just have to go around to the individual speakers and pushing back talks and managing partners that are doing business deals that all of a sudden they can't take their attendees' data. There's just so many issues. They can't do kind of show and tell with their products anymore. Startups are freaking. So it's really just fight or flight mode. You're trying to troubleshoot, trying to fix stuff. Luckily, we managed to put a bandage on the Wi-Fi and get it up and running until later on that evening. And the tech team were able to come in and really do a proper deep dive on it. We turned the fire alarm after a few minutes, so it was like 5-10 minutes. Schedules were delayed. I'd say that was the biggest, and I could just hear the mayor's voice in my head constantly, like, will the Wi-Fi work? Will the Wi-Fi work? Oh my God, how does that not work? But look, these are all learnings coming into this year. It's wild, actually. That was 2019. This is the first year we're back to a live event since then in Toronto. So it's all been about like meeting with the mayor again. It's like, Keith, will the Wi-Fi definitely work this time? Like, we're bringing in a third-party telco. We've doubled or tripled or quadrupled that T team. So it's all about just more planning, more stress testing. Very hard to stress test 35,000 people being in the same room at the same time, but I feel a lot more confident coming in this year now than I did in 2019.
Interesting, because you feel like there's actually certainly a problem with other festivals when like you go to like Glastonbury or something and you just can't get any reception. There's not Wi-Fi as such.
Yeah, well, one of the things that's different at our event versus some competitor events is we give Wi-Fi complimentary to everyone in the conference. So the app is your passport, your schedule, your ticket. It's absolutely everything.
It's really neat.
And it's something we built in Sato. It's something we've always worked hard to get right. Where if you go to some of our competitor events, there might be Wi-Fi pockets. If you stand here, you'll get free Wi-Fi, or different areas. Something we've always wanted to have, but it comes with its own problems and ban load and kind of trying to get that signal strength right across 70,000 or 35,000 people. It's a tricky process.
Besides having good Wi-Fi and not having everyone pissed off, how else do you make an event cool and the aspirational place to go to and get to? Because I feel like there must be a bit of a playbook that you must take up on Web Summit for starting Collision and Rise as well and things. And what would be like the most important thing that you would say if you were going to run any kind of conference? Let's say I wanted to run my own NFT conference, for example.
I think that's quite a hard question to answer, because you really have to figure out, well, what's the main purpose of the conference and start from the start. So for Web Summit, our founder, Paddy Cosgrave, had a very clear vision that he wanted to make sure to connect. So that kind of making sure everyone could network as effectively as possible. You bring venture capitalists over to a conference and you have startups there. Your whole goal will be to make sure the best VCs meet the best startups so that they can do investments in deal flow. And that's a specific experience that you have to give those cohorts, where a speaker might come and they're coming to do a talk, but they might also be coming to meet startups to acquire or to meet other corporate speakers to do business deals with. So you have to give them a different experience. If you're coming as an attendee, I might be a developer and I'm coming to look for a new job or learn about the latest protocol that's happening in one of the computer languages. So it really just depends on who your attendee base is and what their goal is. So I think that's the core of it. You have to make sure that you're treating each attendee group that you're bringing has a different objective and how you're going to manage that. That's kind of at the core of what we do. So it's all around networking, and that's why we kind of built our own IT in-house and built our own app to make sure that that's the best tool for networking that we can provide people. Is you open your app, based on the information you give, we'll feed you people that we recommend you should talk to. We'll feed you recommended talks you should go to, events you should be at. So it's giving everyone their own curated experience. I think if you're building an event, coming from that, what's the problem solution situation is the most important thing. How to make an event cool is a slightly different piece. And I think that's probably happened through the years of Web Summit, some by design, some by chance. Again, it's what's the definition of cool. So there's a couple of stories that always stick out in my mind, which was a very early story. Our last year in Dublin, we did these night events, and we had one where Bono led Elon Musk on a pub crawl around Dublin. You can plan for it, but it's also just things have to go right. But that become a story now, and you can recount that story, and it gets other founders or celebrities excited about what could happen at the event. I always think of our event, they're a centric event. It's all around innovation. So you'll be in the middle of a Web Summit with all these found pitching and startups and tech CEOs. And then I remember seeing Rosario Dawson just walking through the crowd, or Ronaldinho just walking through the crowd. And because they're not big tech names, people didn't even realize who they were. Like, you'd have the odd person, but they weren't the celebrities were the president, or like the CTO of Amazon. They were the revered. So people recognize them, but I think that for me was one of the cool things, is allowing these celebrities to walk through without getting hounded and hassled by everyone. I think Gary Vee was actually one of the people I saw was hounded them out most at one of our events, because there's so many tech entrepreneurs there, and he's an outspoken entrepreneur. He was one of the ones where he had security all around him.
I met Tim Draper at Web Summit, who was just wandering around talking about startups, and most of them didn't really know who he was. Just this guy with big eyebrows running around and the big lights. And
But that
was like, I think I know who that is. Got out my phone. It was like, yes, that is Tim Draper.
yeah.
I'll go talk to him.
But that's exactly it. It's the beauty of we have 1,200 speakers at Web Summit, and they're all at that quality. We work really hard to make sure that they're kind of at the best of the best in either tech or their respective field. So you have these amazing speakers just walking the floor, just talking to startups and networking as regular people. And I think that's really some of the magic that makes the event special.
Big time. As certainly, and as you were saying at the start, around just working out what people are there for and giving them the networking experience. So one thing I've found is one of the reasons why I like podcasting so much is it's not just creating a podcast and making some content. It's also like a really nice way to connect with people and have an interesting conversation and like find out more things for myself and to grow my network and to sort of establish some kind of like thought leadership and things all at once. And it's great. In the same way, it gives you the reason to have that conversation with someone that then gives you everything else. And so like with the conference, you have like the people on stage giving a talk, like the sort of the podcast content part, that is the reason for everything else to happen around it. And I'm like, I couldn't just randomly book in deep, introspective 1 hour chats with people who are epic, like Tim Draper, for no reason. So I think they have a podcast. But for like the conferences, could you actually run a conference where you have all the same people, but without any of the stages or talks? Because of like, you don't necessarily need to go to the stages or talks to actually have the amazing conference experience where you get to like meet random crazy people and learn lots about like the industry and stuff. And has anyone ever tried to make a conference without like the conference-y part?
So it's a funny concept, and I'd agree there is an element of that. So I'll give you an example. So we do Web Summit, RPC, large scale event, a lot of speakers. You have different people coming from different reasons, and the speakers that come on stage, they'll walk the floor, but then in our speaker lounge is where they'll network amongst each other a huge amount. So because we don't pay our speakers and we don't allow people to buy their way into stage, everyone who's come to speak is coming because they want to be there. They have something to say. They're a new product launch or a new topic that they're kind of trying to break through. So they come for a reason, but we make sure that they get a lot of value by networking with each other as well. And we set up a lot of business meetings behind closed doors. But on the side of our events, we do a couple of private events. So we do one called Corporate Innovation Summit, which is for 250 CIOs or people leading innovation. So it's a lot of our corporate speakers, and we give them a 1-day private event. It has some stage content, but not really. It's more about peer-to-peer roundtable sessions, more about networking dinners, networking drinks, and it's about getting those people together just so they can hang out and talk to each other and build their own network. We have one called Founders, which is at the very end of Web Summit. So you get 1,500 startups or 2,000 startups that come to exhibit. And then we cherry pick 150 of the fastest growing startups. And we only allow one founder per company attend this event. So it becomes a very high level networking event from these kind of unicorns of tomorrow. And then we create these unique experiences. So it's not about the stage content, it's just about them, peer-to-peer roundtables, networking events, and then these money can't buy experiences. Like we played a game of football at Benfica Stadium where Rui Costa and Nuno Gomez, or doing a Tour de France bike tour around Lisbon with Bradley Wiggins. So you're creating these unique experiences that they're having with a new cohort that they haven't met before. And then all of a sudden they're creating these new memories while networking with kind of peers. And I think that kind of networking is probably as close to as we've come to creating an event without the stage content. It's more about the experiences and the networking and the peer-to-peer conversations. I think it's possible to answer your question, but I think it's a much smaller scale and very targeted towards those cohorts.
Cool. A few final questions then are, what would you advise yourself when you were younger in terms of, do you think you could have got to being happier faster, or like not wasted time being frustrated?
I would say It's probably something that took me a few years. It's going from finance to advertising, or finding that passion point and something that's interesting that you want to do as a career. I would probably have told myself to start looking for that a little bit earlier. I think it's quite a hard thing to do as you're a teenager and as you're growing up, to figure out what it is you want to do long term. And I think there's a lot of pressure probably put on people to figure out their whole life. I think there's so much pressure put on yourself or put on society for that reason. And I think if we just took a step back and actually, well, what are you interested in? What do you actually enjoy? What gets you excited? And asking those questions a little bit earlier will probably get you to a happier and more successful place quicker than just doing something for, I went into accounting because it was safe, it was a way to make money, and it could lead to other reasons. But I wasn't interested in it, so I didn't go the extra mile learning about it or trying it.
I think it's super important, especially also just showing the potential of kind of careers that you could actually have.
Yeah.
As in, like, advertising is something you could do if you did some creative subjects kind of thing. And that is like a great safe career, just like accounting, and just showing like the fun things that you get to do if you do stuff that's kind of fun. So I totally was like, finished my GCSEs, and with A-levels, well, I loved art and music, but was like, well, obviously I can't do those. I can actually maths and physics and science. I'm good at these things, and these are proper subjects.
That mindset is so damaging. And it took me a while. I would also say, in that same respect, don't put too much pressure on yourself to figure everything out. You'll probably have multiple careers through your life. So find something that's interesting and you can learn and you can build skill sets. But you might go into, like I've had so far, my short career, I've already been in 3 industries, and skill sets cross over. Don't you get into it, you start from the start. I actually probably add as well, which I only realized after joining Websense, is I think for the first decade of my career, I was so specific to Ireland and probably even more specific to Dublin. And the reality of when you start working with people in New York or in Asia or around the world, everyone's the exact same. And the internet has made communication and outreach so easy that, think outside your own city or country and think globally, because people are the exact same or have the same problems or same opportunities anywhere in the world. And that's
pretty good advice. Nice. Thanks. On the subject of the favorite purchase for $100 or less that's changed your life, what is the best purchase you've ever made?
I'd say there's 2 that come to mind in recent years. One is a book, The Atomic Habits by James Clear. I really enjoyed that book when I read it, and I just think I read it at the right time. I read it just when it came out, and I just built some really good habits, that small things like stretching or running or making your bed or whatever they are for you personally. It just helped me build a couple of really good habits. And the second one is a small rubber ball for rolling your feet. I used to get really bad hamstrings, and that has absolutely changed my life from a comfort level. It's just that $5, $10 rubber ball to roll like a little small lacrosse ball to roll your feet and stretch out your hamstrings. Completely changed.
Happy for you. I've been getting tighter hamstrings lately with all the running, and haven't been doing some of my stretchings I should have done. What is one of the kindest things that someone has done for you?
Interesting. I would say, career-wise, it was probably the person that gave me my first chance in advertising, because I was in finance. I was doing this course at nighttime, and I went for an interview in this media agency. Didn't get the job because I didn't have the experience. And then about a month later, another road opened up, and I emailed one of the managers that had interviewed me previously. And she did a call with me and talked me through the new role, the new interview, told me that I 100% should go for it, and just helped coach me through the interview process a little bit. And that was a game changer, because it led me on the path to where I am now and changed my career. So I think her just giving me that little bit of time and encouragement to go for it, even though I didn't have experience, was massive. In a life perspective, I'd probably look at kind of more recent years, and I don't know if kindness is the right word, but a close friend introduced me to my current partner, which is quite rare, I think, nowadays, to meet someone through a friend. And that was a few years ago. It's completely changed my life for the better as well. So I'd say both of those things are kind of 2 pivotal moments.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly like the one that you have like a huge amount of gratitude for. It can be like a pretty small things, and it's not that much extra effort for someone to like actually think, okay, actually, you're single, my friend's also single, mate, like you guys seem kind of similar. You sort of, they put themselves out there a little bit, suggesting it, because you maybe hate each other and then like they feel bad or whatever, but like it's probably worth it just in case. And so like if you're listening and you're thinking about maybe just do it. Just you never know.
What's the worst?
Thanks so much. Really cool. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and looking forward to how the Collision Conference goes this year now that you're back in person.
Okay, cheers, and I really appreciate catching up. And obviously, if you're planning a trip over to Toronto or free in June, I know you said Glastonbury might be on the cards, but do ping me. Let me know if you want to come over, and I'll help you, or else I'll see you hopefully in Lisbon.
Thanks a lot for Keith Wallace coming on the show today. He's such a warm individual and a great person to talk with. It was truly a pleasure. Now, I totally agree with his advice that often when we start our careers, we chase what sounds cool to others or what pays well, yet actually, the earlier that you can sit down and just work out what are the things you truly enjoy doing each day, how you like working, who you want to be around, that will make such a difference to actually enjoying yourself and doing your best work. This is why I'm currently in Nepal being a mountain guide and not in an office working behind a computer every day, because ultimately, I just like being outdoors. And sure, 10 years ago, it wasn't what I thought I'd be doing, but actually, I like it. Anyway, as always, I'd love to ask you that if you did learn anything today, do try and reflect on it, journal, walk without anything else on your ears and just think, talk to a friend or partner about it, and perhaps do someone a favor by sharing the episode with them. Perhaps you have this overwhelming urge to just make a podcast a smile. Well, you're in luck, because you can do that today, right now, by simply leaving a positive rating on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Or just hit me up in the comments or shoot me an email at growthmindsetpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, remember that life is to be enjoyed. That means not putting off enjoyment until some future scenario. Life is lived one day at a time. It is not lived in the future. So do as Keith says, work out what you actually like doing and try and do that instead. Take it easy on yourself. Whilst you're at it, try making someone else's day a little bit brighter too.